districts. We can see where the roads, the main roads are, the main rivers, and that kind of area around the earthquake, again with settlements named. So in terms of a situational overview, this is exactly the sort of thing that we were looking for, and I think in all of the maps that we've had submitted so far, that's come through really clearly. I think there's been some interesting cartographic choices in terms of things like colours, so I'm just kind of looking at it here. We've got oranges, we've got purples, pinks, reds, browns, a sort of light pale beige. So lots and lots of different approaches, but again, that's fine. It's about thinking what are the cartographic choices that are going to help me get this message across. And if you choose, for example, red, then you're perhaps inferring that this is something that's bad or dangerous, and we might not want to do that. So actually, a lot of the palettes that you've chosen here, like the kind of the pinks, the purples, they're reasonably neutral, and so actually that's very good from a humanitarian standpoint. We're not making a judgment on the situation. We're just telling people, look, this is where we need to get to. I think there was one map in particular I did want to kind of pick out. Do you mind scanning through quickly, Steve?
Yeah.
Once it loads, I really like the decision to put two maps on one sheet of paper. Did anybody else think about doing this? Did anybody think, well, actually, we want to understand the situation in the affected regions, but actually, in the wider context, when we're talking about, for example, bringing in logistics, so we talked about the helicopters, which was a little bit of a fun inject, but actually, if the helicopters can't land in this region, they may have to land down here and drive in. The doctors may have to drive it. So actually, although we're interested in this region here, it's not necessarily a bad thing to get that wider picture as well, so that you can understand how the affected region sits within the wider country. So that's why I wanted to pick that one out, because I really kind of like that. A few other things that I was going to pick up on, we'll just do it by a show of hands. Did anybody go for things like rule-based labelling? So we asked you to, so this is an example where it hasn't been done. So we asked you to label up the surrounding countries. So you've got Zambia, Malawi, Mozambique. But you can see here, and in this one, that we've got the United Republic of Tanzania. One of the things that we showed you yesterday was how you could say, how you could write a query that said anything but this. So you could have written a query that said, show me all of the labels, unless that label is United Republic of Tanzania, and that would have meant that you didn't have this label sitting over the top of the others. So again, it's nice to think about how you can use those queries to, again, cut out information that you don't necessarily want to include on the map. One of the things, actually, I've got it on mine, so I can't show it. So, yeah, actually, so I think you've started to do it with this one as well. So here we've got the kind of hash over the affected area. So the hash is allowing us to see a little bit of what's underneath, so we can still see the rivers running through here. We can still see the roads. One of the other options that we've got with that is to look at the transparency. So when you go into that symbology, you've got the option to increase the transparency of the layer so that you can see what's underneath. And if I get a chance before we leave, I'll show you, because I was kind of working a little bit on my own map here, in and out of the kind of Wi-Fi and electricity issues. So one of the things that I wanted to do was to be able to see the underlying topography. Again, I talked about that this morning. Putting that topography underneath because it's an earthquake region, but I want to be able to see where the affected regions are, and so one of the ways you can do that is to kind of increase the transparency.
Could we maybe do a deep dive review of this map whilst we're here? Go step by step through it.
Yeah,
does anyone want to own up? You were saying, if we look into the more detail behind it as well, obviously it's showing us everything we need, and it's important to get the map out in time so that the decision makers can start to make those decisions. I like the use of, this is very important as well, because we have two maps, we have two scale bars. So that allows us to get that different measure on the different scales and the different geographical context. Use of the north arrow as well. I'm not personally a massive fan of these, but this is what the instructions said, so we can keep the grids in. Normally I think the scale bar is pretty good. The use of the title is very clear, also publication date, etc. I think there's a couple of things which could be useful. So we are missing sources on this map, so we don't actually know the source of this data. So if someone was going to update it and try and recreate it themselves, they wouldn't know where the source of the data is. Similarly, it's nice to have a description as well. So we have the title, but also having a description of the map is also very nice to have. So I'd say that I'm being super picky. There's some underscores in the legend. It's fine, we can remove those, but that's like being super picky. But the bit that was picked up on is the normalization of the legend. So you can see we have some numbers that, we have 1640, 1640, but that's okay. But I like the way it's been normalized, so we don't just have random numbers available to us. Overall, I think as a decision map, you can easily see where the earthquake epicenter is. You can see the main geographical locations and towns with the population. So in terms of telling that story and narrative, I think it's a very good map to kick off with. So that's...
Yeah.